You're listening to the Anxious Scholar Podcast, a podcast for anxious scholars. If you're a high school student who can't wait to go to university, but also is kind of overwhelmed with lots of unanswered questions like me, then you've definitely come to the right place. On this podcast, I sit down with EGM alumni while they share valuable advice from this exciting journey of theirs that we have yet to take. I really hope you'll enjoy this episode and learn lots of useful information about the college application process, unis, and higher education in general. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Victoria, and I'm here today with my guest, Maewenn. Maewenn graduated from EGM in 2020 and has been studying Medecine in Université, Cité for 3 years now. So she'll be able to share with us her experience with Medecine studies and her admission process that came beforehand. So could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Maewenn, and I've been in UGM since I was in moyenne section. So I'm kind of like an old student from there. My parents were both French, but I spoke English at home with my dad because he was from UGM too. And so right now I'm studying medicine. I did the Bac S, which is kind of different than the Bac you have now, but basically it's the same thing as having math, physics, and SVT specializations. And so
Well, thank you for introducing yourself. Could you also introduce the studies of medicine to us? Like, what does it imply? How long does it last? What important exams do you have to take during your studies? What choices to make, and maybe if there's a selection process, how does it work?
So basically, there's two ways to enter medicine. Either you enter it through a PAS or through a LAS. So PAS is kind of like the historic way where you have a concours at the end of the first year, which will determine if you get into medicine or not. And the LAS is kind of another way where you do a bachelor's degree with a minor of health studies. And basically the higher ranked people will be able to get into medicine. So it's kind of a longer route to go into medicine, but some people who are not really sure they want to do medicine tend to do that. Mm-hmm. So now 50% of the people who are in medicine come from LAS and 50% come from PAS, so that's an important thing to take into account. And so after that, so the studies really start when you're in second year. So second and third year are kind of the years where you learn physiology and things like that. And then for the fourth and fifth year, you prepare a very important concours, so another one, which is national, and which will determine your specialization and the city where you will do the specialization. So this concours you take when you're in sixth year, and then following that, you have between 4 and 7 years, I think, of specialization. So overall, the studies can be like a bit shorter or much longer if you want to do some specializations like surgery or like very specific specializations.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the national exam. You said it determines your specialization. Are you the one who is choosing it, or is it after your results that they're gonna say that you have those possibilities?
Well, basically, the highest ranked is choosing first, and so there's a number of spots in each cities for each specializations, and so you choose according to that. And so I forgot to say, but after the sixth year, so you're an intern, so you're a doctor, like a training doctor. You're allowed to prescribe and everything. And before that, from the fourth to the fifth year, you're half of the time in the hospital, so which is really good to learn and everything. It's really nice.
And you said you're learning after being an intern. Is it still the same status as an intern, or you're like a student who's working half time? Yeah. When you said after your sixth year you're an intern,
yeah,
and then you work half time in university. In the hospital. Are you
a
doctor?
Before that.
Oh, okay.
Basically, so you do what's called the external from the fourth to the fifth year, where you prepare your concours, the national concours, And so then you're half-time at the hospital, and then after the concours, when you specialize, you're full-time in the hospital, and you're a doctor, and you prescribe, you're just still training because you have to learn your specialization.
Okay. And do you know what you want to specialize yourself in?
So I don't really know. I must say every time I do an internship, I kind of like the specialization that I'm in. Right now I'm doing an internship in surgery, and I really like it. So it's orthopedic surgery, and we get to do a lot of things and really participate in like the department and everything. So I don't really know. I know I don't want to be a general practitioner. And I like a specialization that's possible to practice in the hospital, but also in private, because it's important to also maintain the like work-life balance.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the internships, and right now we're in Seconde, so we already did one during our high school in Troisième, and now it's going to be one the last 2 weeks, and we're going to have to present in front of jury. We've all done this, and did you get to do internships that are related to Medecine, or is it okay if it wasn't necessarily something that you wanted to study?
Well, it's not necessary, first of all, to do an internship in like a hospital, something like that, before you study medicine, because first of all, it's really hard to get if you don't have contacts, because in terms of like legal, it's very hard for a very young person to be in the hospital. I got to do an internship when I was in troisième in the hospital, and I really liked it, and that's actually the main thing that motivated me to do medicine. So yeah, I found it a really good opportunity, and I would recommend, if people have the opportunity to do that, to do it to kind of see how it is and everything.
Yeah, to understand if it's really their thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And is that when you knew you wanted to do medicine in troisième, or even before that?
Well, I knew that I was kind of at a crossroads between wanting a scientific like degree and having also the kind of social and human part, because I wasn't like 100% of a scientific. I also really liked literary subjects and everything. And so I knew that I needed to have some scientific aspect, but also some like human and human contact aspect. And so medicine was kind of the logical choice. So yeah, and it was confirmed when I did the internship.
And especially about you talked about the choice, and some students, it's definitely not an easy thing to do because it's a very big commitment, a lot of years of studying, and even after your career, it's very challenging. And some people even, they start their studies and then decide to change. So it's not for everyone. But in your opinion, is there like a some character traits that would make a good doctor, or like a personality that might show that medicine is the right choice for you?
Well, I would say you have to like people, in the sense that you're going to have a lot of patients that are going to want to talk a lot because they're lonely. You have to be able to listen a lot, because a lot of a doctor's job is to listen, because that's like the way to get what a patient has and the way to understand what the patient has, because and that's something that people will learn, but basically when you interrogate a patient, they will not say exactly what they have, and you really have to go deep in order to understand. So you have to be a really good listener, you have to be curious, and basically not like scratch the surface every time you interrogate someone or anything. And I'd say you have to be persistent and really know that you want to do that and that you're interested, because it's not easy studies. If you do it in France, you have the kind of milestone of the concours if you do a pass. So you have to be motivated and know that even after the concours, it's hard, especially when you prepare the national one. So, but that it's really rewarding, and it's really nice studies.
And during your application, when your application is reviewed in terms of your grades and your dossier, is there a moment where they could see this, like you said, a human side of you, like an interview, or is this not part of the admission process for medicine universities?
Well, for the admission process in first year, there's none, because it's Parcoursup and you send your dossier, and so there's no interview because there's so many people who apply. Then the second, like when you do the first year, you do the concours. So if you do the concours of the pass, some people get in directly, some people have to take an oral, And so in this oral, they will kind of see how you're able to deal with a situation that is not linked to medicine, like everyday situations or things like that. So in this sense, they kind of grasp your humane part, but it's true that you mainly have to be an extremely hard worker to get in. And so, yeah, they don't really take this into account, sadly.
And apart from, like you said, there's an oral, so at the end of the first year of your university, is there, like, from the things that they consider, the universities, they obviously look at grades because that's important, but do they look at, for example, extracurricular activities or volunteering you did, or not necessarily?
To get in, no, it's really like, it's university, so technically there's no selection process. So basically you can get in no matter your grades or anything, and I really don't think they look at extracurriculars, and so yeah, it's not as hard of an application process than the UK or the US, where you have to really prepare something and be very invested.
And you said most people are, accepted, and it's after the selection process goes, so there's not like grade requirements or like predicted grades that.
No, there's none. Well, it's actually like, it's Parcoursup, and it's a non-selective process. So I guess that if you have terrible grades, you won't get in. But I mean, it's really what you give during the first year that's important, more than anything before. And despite the fact that, for Medecine, it's not in Parcoursup, the system, it's not necessarily important, but you were in a school where there's it's very encouraged extracurricular activities, and a lot of maybe unique kind of studies that we did, like even languages, linguistics. So do you think that would, if you can, for example, do exchange years or double diplomas, those skills would be useful for you, like the languages you were taught in GM? Yeah, well, I think coming from a GM is a really big strength when you take medicine. Well, for any studies, I would say, but also for medicine, even if you do medicine in France, because first of all, in the hospital, you will have a lot of patients who don't speak French, so you have to be able to communicate. English is the easiest way because a lot of people know at least a bit of English, so that's important. And also for the exchange programs, because you can do a lot of Erasmus or internships abroad. So that's interesting, and it always adds something to your curriculum. And I think that it's important and it's interesting. And UGM also encourages us to kind of go further in our studies. So I would say that people who come from UGM will tend to want to do a lot of double diplomas or things like that, which are things that are extremely valued and very important if you want to pursue.
Would you want to do a double diploma or go somewhere else in another country during your studies?
Well, I think I'd like to do an exchange program at some point, and I'm actually doing a double diploma. Well, I'm doing a master's of public health, which is more focused on statistics. So it's interesting, especially if you want to pursue in research. And now in the hospital, if you want to get a job within a public hospital, they really value the fact that you have a master's and a kind of research background.
Are you able to do the master's right now, even in your third year, or are you going to start it after?
No, I'm able to do it. So we kind of do it between the second and the third year. So they allow us to do a few subjects per year, so that we're not overwhelmed with work. But it's a good equilibrium.
And for traveling not traveling, but studying in different countries, but also, for example, for exercising your profession in another country where you studied in one and you want to work in another, could you, for example, comment on this legal aspect? Because it's very similar to, for example, law, where you can't exercise it in another country if you studied in one. So if you studied in France, would you be able to be a doctor in another country?
So there's the accord between all the EU countries that says that if you have a degree, especially in France, you can exercise medicine anywhere in the EU. So that's a really good thing because it gives you a big span of countries. Also for the UK, I think, well, before there were some deals, but I think now it's not very clear yet. But I think you can take some equivalences. The thing that's hard is if you want to if you want to work in the US, you have to take a lot of exams and redo a fellowship, etc. So I would say if you really want to practice in the US, it's better to go in the US in the beginning.
Okay. And to go back to France, what are the other places you could study medicine in?
So in France, there's a lot of medical schools. So the best overall at the national exams are the ones that are in Paris. So in Paris, like inside of Paris, there's two main ones. There's Université Cité and Sorbonne Université. So Sorbonne Université is Paris 6, and Université Cité is the fusion of Paris Descartes and Paris Diderot. So the good thing with this university is that there's a lot of spots because they merged two universities, so there's twice as much spots for Medecine, a lot of hospital options all around Paris, and so I think it's really good. There's a lot of very interesting hospitals.
Okay, and could you tell us a little bit about your program in this specific university and your diploma? Like what is it called, and how long it's gonna last, and what exams you have to take, what courses you're studying.
So as I said earlier, it's kind of separated between the part where you're an actual doctor and the part where you're not. So right now I'm in third year, and we do half time in the hospital and half time in class. Then this will continue on fourth and fifth year, which is where you're externe. So here you already have a lot of responsibilities within the hospitals, and so it's really interesting. And then, so as I said, you become a doctor and you train, etc. I'm not sure what you want me to say more than that.
Well, whatever you think is you want to share about your maybe everyday life, like a typical day as a medicine student.
So I'd say a typical day. Well, the time where you start kind of depends on where you work in the hospital. So I'm in surgery, so it starts really early. Usually it starts around 7:30. Then we have surgery during the day, and then I go to class. So it's a pretty busy day, and it's pretty tiring because you have to work in the hospital and be like alive, interrogate people, etc. And then you have to actually sit down and work and be focused. So it's kind of hard to deal with in the beginning, but then you kind of get used to it, and well, you don't have a choice in any case.
For sure, that's true. But in terms of your work, is it more like a learning material, or is it also written work or research or analysis?
Oh yeah, so that's pretty different than basically any other studies. We don't have homework. We barely have homework. It's really a lot of independent work. So a lot of people don't go to class. They actually just work on the material. It's what I do. So we also have some kind of tutorials, like they call it in the UK, where you kind of see a teacher in a small group, because that's the thing to know is that it's really big promo, so it's very hard to be in a huge amphi and have 300 people around you. So in the end, not a lot of people go in class, and you work pretty independently on the material. We don't do research yet because we don't have we don't have a research degree, but we work a lot on. For the first year, we work a lot on physiology, so how the body works normally, and also the signs of different illnesses and things like that. And we get to practice this during the internships, which is really amazing because it's the best way to learn, really, and it's one of the differences between France and other countries. So that's what I really, really like about my studies, at least.
That you get to have independent work, but also practice it. Have practical work where you can.
And it's so important because I mean the most important part of being a doctor is being able to do that. And the more you practice this, the more you get good at it, the less you forget things. Because it's important to say that forgetting things can be absolutely fatal, and if you forget to ask some questions, etc., you can have huge problems, including legally. So it's important to practice and to be able to have people teach you, and it's really good.
To practice a lot. And do you guys do this often in terms of like are you tested often exams? I know in prépa you're tested every week with the DST. Is this the case for your medicine studies?
Not at all. It's kind of like the UK in the sense that we have exams every semester.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we have exams in the middle of the semester, but it's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they kind of let us be, and then we have exams, and so we pass or we fail. It depends. And,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And even though, I mean, it's known medicine studies are very challenging. Like I said, they're rigorous. It takes a lot of time. How would you describe your life as a student? Maybe the community in your university, the mood there.
Well, it's a really nice mood because there's a lot of different profiles, a lot of different people who want very different things. We're a lot, so you get to like meet new people literally every time you go to university, which is kind of a rare thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then in second and third year, there's a lot of association, so you can really do so many things, and that's so like interesting, especially when you come out of first year, where you literally spend your year in your room, and so you get out and kind of see real life and how it works. There's the famous like Medecine parties and things like that, and so it's also part of being a student, and it's really nice.
So the work-life balance is good, and you guys managed to have that.
Well, in second and third year, yes,
mm-hmm.
But then it's also because we know that for the fourth and the fifth, it's not going to be the case at all.
Mm-hmm. You're
so
enjoying
kind of, yeah.
While it lasts.
Exactly.
And after that, it's because you're going to start working in the actual hospital. That's why it's becoming harder.
Well, we already starting like the second semester of third year, we already work half time with the hospital. But the thing is, during the fourth year and the fifth year, we have to prepare the concours,
mm-hmm.
so the national one, which is so important. And like a lot of people set the milestone of Medecine after the first year, and like basically, if you get out of first year, you're done and it's okay. Except there's a huge milestone that's even more important that comes after, and so it's like it really scares everyone because you get to like study on huge books, and there's so many books, and you don't even understand how you can remember all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, we know that we're gonna have to work on that, and it's especially hard because we have to be in the morning at the hospital, and then in the afternoon we have to really study hard.
Mm-hmm.
So during these years, it's really hard to find a work-life balance, mm-hmm. especially because we also have the garde that we have to add. So the garde is the parts where you have to stay in the hospital during the nights or during the weekends, and so obviously it kind of like mixes up your schedule and everything. Mm-hmm. And but it's also part of being a doctor. It's meant to prepare us, so it's important
for the career. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any tips for future medicine studies, or even your fellow students that are studying with you?
Well, I have like kind of different types of tips. For the first year, it's like really just work super hard and just don't look back. It's a very stressful year because it's a concours. Mm-hmm. So basically, you don't know how the other people are doing compared to you, and you're kind of going to be able to know this after like the whole year. So there's two concours, one in December and one in like May. So it's a really stressful year, and you just have to just keep working really seriously. For people from UGM who can't afford it, I would recommend taking a prépa next to it. So it's a kind of it's a private thing that helps you prepare the concours, and that gives you the learning material. So this is a huge plus, and it's really hard to do it without. Mm-hmm. So and there's also something by the prépa, which is called the pré-entrée, which is also really important if people can afford it because it's pretty expensive. But yeah, and just work a lot and don't look back. Try to organize your day in such a way that you don't get completely exhausted, but that you're still able to work a lot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and then I would say during second and third year, just enjoy, because don't stress yourself out on what's going to happen later. Try to enjoy and meet new people, etc. And then go back to work again.
And you mentioned associations when you talked about the mood in your university and how you can meet new people. Are you talking about like clubs and?
Yeah, so we call this association, but there are clubs. So we have the arts club, the sports club, and so you get to do a lot of different things, and that's really, really nice.
Are you really doing any in your university?
Well, I kind of participate to many things in parallel, so it's really nice because you can just like
get your mind off of things.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really nice.
And continue your hobbies, your activities that despite working so much. And also something interesting about the prépa, you said so there isn't a prépa de médecine.
Yeah.
But what kind of schools offer this type of prépa that prepare you for the concours at the end of the first year?
So they're not linked with the schools. It's something that you take in parallel of university. So there's different names of prépa. The one that people take the most is called Medecine. And so how it's organized with Medecine, so they give you all of the working material, which is extremely good. And if you have the fiche from Medecine, you can basically not go to any class, not take any of the material from the university, which makes you win a lot of time, and so therefore a lot of spots. So this way, and then there's also classes in Medecine, where they are gonna explain the subjects that are pretty hard for people, like physics or chemistry, and that are pretty important in the concours. So it's a big plus.
But you said if you're allowed to not go to classes in your university, so Université Cité, but isn't this year supposed to like prepare you for the concours?
Yes, it is, but you basically we have all the classes available online, so everything is filmed, etc. And if you take the prépa, the fastest way to learn is not to go to classes because you have to take time to go. You have to listen to sometimes some teachers who speak very like slowly, which is, and I mean, I might sound like a freak when I say this, but it's so important to like not waste time during the first year. And some people tend to waste time by wanting to go to class and do the prépa, and like it depends. But it really depends on your type of profile. If you like going to class and if it's useful, if you're really focused during class, it can really help. I know that most people don't, but I mean, some people manage to do it without a prépa and while going to class. It really depends on your profile.
And you said in the prépa they explain to you like things like physics and chemistry, and that made me think of the Specialités that people usually take right now, because obviously the bac has changed. For you took S, like you said, from LES. And now most people, I mean, I think it's kind of like a no-brainer to take math, physics, chimie, and SVT. Because those are the most, I mean, the question is, would something else be useful? Probably not for medicine, but is it necessary? Like you have to have the level in high school for those subjects?
Well, I think the most important one to absolutely have is physics.
Oh, okay.
Because if you don't have physics, it's really complicated. The thing is, when you take physics, you have to take math, because it's complicated to understand physics without math. So, I mean, I would definitely take math, physics, and SVT. Then for terminal, I think it's pretty equivalent whether you drop math or SVT. Because in the end, what you do in SVT, you can really catch up. So I think it depends. I think universities are not very selective on this point. You just need to have taken the 3 that we mentioned in première. And I think this is important.
It might just be me, but why is SVT not as important? Because it's the level that isn't like, I mean, in university it's much higher, or why is physics chimie so important?
Well, physics chimie, I would say it's because it's more of a like matière à réflexion. And so this is kind of something that you can't really catch up with, whereas SVT is a lot of cours, which you will anyway have like during your studies. So it's easier to catch up, but if you didn't understand like big concepts of physics for SVT, it's going to be really hard, especially over chemistry, sorry. And also physics is pretty important during the first year. So I would choose that. Like physics and chemistry have big coefficients, and especially biophysics. So physics is not that important, but biophysics, but it kind of takes up some of the things that you do in première and terminale. So I would say it's the main one.
Okay, that's well. Again, most people, everyone that I talked about that wants to do medicine, they already know that that's the path to take. But
yeah, I think it's the smartest way to go and the safest one.
For sure. And when you were, applying to different universities, like you mentioned, the École Descartes, and I was wondering what made you choose this one in particular. Was there a specific courses that interest you? Again, the community. You said it was really nice to meet new people, or maybe some professors in particular that you wanted to have.
Well, not particularly professors, but it was also mainly because of the merger between Descartes and Diderot, which kind of made Université Cité the biggest university in Paris, and so therefore I would say the most influent in terms of professors that they have here, in terms of research also, and with the biggest amount of hospitals, and therefore also the biggest amount of spots in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So I originally wanted to go to Descartes because of it's a very successful medical school, and I wanted to go there. I was a bit afraid of the physics level in Descartes, which was very high, but in the end it was okay. So that's why I chose Université Cité rather than Sorbonne. And I would, my advice would be to really check on which one you want. I would advise Université Cité because there's practically twice as much spots for medicine. So it's kind of better odds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would advise this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good advice then. Thank you. And you talked about the work-life balance. Do you have any tips for that also? In particular, maybe like how to continue to do your hobbies. If you, again, like in school, we did many things outside of school, and to continue that, maybe if you did music or sports or languages.
Well, I think in first year, let's be honest, it's really hard to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So apart from if you do it, I don't know, an hour a week or something like that, it's really hard to actually keep a hobby where you practice every day or every 2 days. But then you can do that. You can continue doing that when you're in second year, third year. I would say it's important to keep a contact with your friends from UGM, etc., because it's also nice to have some friends outside from Medecine, because it's true that when you're in a group of people who are in Medecine, we always talk about that. So it's a lot about the patients you saw, etc., and so it can be a bit hard sometimes. So I would say that, and then for the overall work-life balance, I think it's important also to dedicate some time to release the pressure and not just be all about work, even though it's really important.
Mm-hmm. And later in your career, for example, you're someone who likes literature also, and not only scientific subjects, which is the main the key to medicine. In your career, would there be chances to practice this and to do more literary work, like to do research or write? Because definitely being a doctor takes up a lot of your time. You said even when you do garde in the night, so sometimes you don't have. Do you have the possibility to do different types of activities?
Well, the good thing about being a doctor is you can really choose where you work, what you do, etc. So this will be determined by the specialization that you do, but also by the additional degrees that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So you can totally be a doctor and do some research. So all of the professors in the hospitals do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a part where they teach, a part where they do research, and a part where they actually practice medicine. So I think I'd like to have a part of research and not just be about the pure medicine and patients, because I think it's really important, and it's it helps you also widen your perspectives on things.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's really rich studies to be able to do that. It's a really nice opportunity, and there's not a lot of jobs where you actually get to really like handle the way you want to work and the way you want to like practice.
So after the 6th year, when you do your concours national, is when you start the specialization.
Yeah.
So could you maybe mention a few paths you can take? Because the first 6 years are general, so everybody who does medicine has to go through those years, and then different, like, there's, I mean, it's a very big industry. There's so many jobs you can do. So
Yeah.
if you can maybe talk about those, what can you choose?
Well, you can choose so many things. Like I don't even know how many there are, but there are so many. So of course you can go in the classic things like cardiology or things like that. You can go into surgery.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and then you specialize in the type of surgery you want. You can also be a general practitioner. So, and when you're an intern, you kind of have to do internships in different fields, even if you choose one specialization. Like for example, if you choose orthopedic surgery, you have to do an internship in plastic surgery, one in rheumatology, etc. So they kind of force you to like also have a kind of global view and do a lot of things. But yeah, no, there were so many things, and also after that, you can choose to stay in the hospital or go in the private sector or do both. There's a lot of professors who do both, so that's also a big liberty you have. It's a good thing.
And you said you want to go in the private, do both if you have the chance.
Well, given the fact that I'd like to do research potentially, I need to stay in the public sector. But I'd like to still have the option in case at some point I want to, or like it's too much work and too time consuming. I think it's good to have this option, especially now that we hear all about the problems at PHP, etc. The fact that the hospital doesn't have a lot of money, etc. I think it's important to have that option if you want to.
And what are your opinions about the lately in France there's been doctor shortages in les déserts médicaux. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think it's definitely a big issue, and so now they've been adding a year to Médecine Générale, where they force you to go in the désert médical. So I don't really think it's the right way to do it, and I think that the best way to make it appealing is to kind of like, I don't know, put higher salaries or higher advantages for the people who go there. I think it's really important to have medical care everywhere, because I mean, a simple thing like a car accident can have someone die in La Campagne, but if you're in Paris, you'll survive because there's a hospital right near. So I think it's really important to be able, like especially in France, to be able to have an access to a doctor pretty close.
And it's the generation after you that are gonna have to do this year where they work in the désert médical, or is it also gonna include you?
It's gonna include me if I choose to do the Médecine Générale.
And what do you mean by Médecine Générale?
Like after the 6th year, when you have the national concours, you can choose many specialization, and Médecine Générale is a specialization, which is something that changed compared to before.
And after that, you can still specialize whatever you decide to do something.
No, because Médecine Générale is a specialization.
Okay, and what kind of jobs would that just like
your general practitioner?
Okay, that's good to know. And during your career, you mentioned during your studies that you have to first you're an intern, and then you become a doctor. Is there any like other obligatory kind of steps to take? If you could walk us through that during like a medical career.
Well, it's really about how your responsibilities evolve. So first, you're just basically like stagiaire, and you just observe a lot. So that's during 2nd year. You learn to interrogate patients, etc. Then when you come into 3rd year a bit, and then much more 4th and 5th year, you're an externe. So I mean, you help to operate if you're in the OR, or you can like actually take care of patients. You're assigned some patients. Then when you're an intern, you completely handle your patients, and you're responsible for your patients and for how they go. You're also responsible for what the externes do, so the ones that are fourth and fifth year. So you get more and more responsibilities the more you evolve in your studies, and it's a good thing because it's like it evolves. You don't get too many responsibilities at once, but you still have to learn to handle things because sometimes, I mean, it's a hospital and sometimes there's an emergency, there's something, which means that you're gonna have to do something. In third year, we also have training for emergency, etc. So we have to be able to participate in the reanimation of someone. Because I mean, if you're with a patient and this patient crashes, you have to be able to do something. So that's also a big responsibility because no matter where you are in the hospital, I mean, it's people that are sick, so people can have problems and you need to be able to deal with this no matter your level of study.
For sure. If and you know, obviously the admission process is not as important in this specific studies path that is medicine. In your, I mean, you have a lot of you have long years to come of studying, but definitely you've had your share of experience. Is there something that you wish you had known sooner, in regards to your studies and your higher education?
Well, I think I would say that I wish I had, well, I have some families that are doctors, so I kind of knew already how it went. But I think that people don't emphasize enough the fact that after first year, it's not over and that you have a lot to go after. And especially the part where you're in exam and you have to prepare for the concours, which is very tough. You have to work a lot, even more than in first year. So it's an important thing to say, but they're really rewarding studies. And honestly, I must say I didn't think that I would have so many responsibilities so early on, and that I would be able to like go to the hospital as much as I'm going now. So that's a really nice thing.
Okay. And do you think most people who choose to study, medical career path, it's because they have family members that have already done this or who work in this industry? Because maybe some people who aren't very familiar from their family, they wouldn't think about it. What do you think about this? Do you think that's the case? And how could other people learn about this and be more exposed and consider this choice?
Well, I think it's possible that you're, of course, influenced by what your parents or your grandparents may have done. But I mean, my grandparents were doctors, and they kind of advised me against.
Really?
So because it's not a very easy life, and you have to make choices which are going to determine how you live, etc. So I know a lot of doctors who don't recommend doing medicine right now, and others who say that it's amazing and extremely rewarding, etc. But I mean, how would you be able to kind of see what medicine is? I wouldn't really know how to. I mean, I guess classic TV shows, but they're not really representative of what's actually life. Well, there's a good movie that's a French movie called Première Année, which is pretty representative of what the first year is. And then there's another movie which is called Hippocrate, which is the story of an intern. And so maybe they're good movies to see if you just want to get a general idea. But once again, I mean, they're not really like totally real life, of course.
Yeah, I think Hippocrate is on Netflix.
Yeah, it is.
But and you got to have this experience already. You've been studying for 3 years, and you had experiences in the hospital. What do you think? What for you is gratifying about this job, about these studies?
Well, I think it's really nice because you get to help people. You get to talk to people who have totally different life experiences, etc. In surgery, particularly, you get literally a direct effect of what you've been doing. Like if someone comes with a broken spine and you just repair it, well, you directly like have done something for this person. And then we also do some consultation, which are after the operation, where you see how people are going, etc. So I think this is really rewarding because you get to listen to people, and it's really important for a lot of people to just have someone listen to you, and this we tend to forget, especially when you become a doctor and you don't have a lot of time. So I think being a student is really important, especially for that, and to kind of always remember that you have to listen and you have to pay attention to the patient and not just to the fact that you have 15 minutes per patient and that you just need to go on.
Mm-hmm. And so, when as a doctor, what makes this job is that it's spiritually, it's very again it's gratifying, and it's like you said, rewarding in your job. So it's emotionally, it's very rich also.
Yeah, it's very rich, but it's also, there's also a downside to this in the sense that you don't have to be too involved. You have to be, you have to be open to the patient's experience, but you also have to protect yourself in the sense that you're going to be confronted to very hard situations. Patients with cancer, patients who have children who are going to die, or children's as well. It's very, it's not a very easy job on a day-to-day basis, but you kind of have to keep in mind that you're always trying to help them and that you're always going to do your best to help the patients. But yeah, sometimes when you have deaths or things like that, it's really hard and you have to speak to people, and that's really important.
Do you have any last piece of advice for students who are thinking of doing medicine, or already know, but they need something like a little conseil?
Well, I would say that they're really nice studies, very, very interesting, especially in France, because you get to have hands-on experience very early in the studies, which is different to the US or the UK, where you have a whole part where it's just theory. So I would say that this is really interesting, that you have to seize every opportunity you get when you're in internships and things like that. That it's really nice studies that you just have to keep going, and that also your grades are not that important. So your grades in première and terminale, I was a pretty average student. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't good. But I worked a lot during my first year and I got in. So yeah, keep in mind that it's not because you're not top of your class that you won't manage to do medicine. I'd say it's the most important part.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Maewenn, for sharing your journey and many useful pieces of information and advice with us, future applicants.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Anxious Scholar podcast. See you in 2 weeks for the next interview, and don't miss out on any additional information on our Instagram @TheAnxiousScholar.